There is a kind of person you have met before. They do not announce themselves when they walk into a room. They do not rush to fill silence with words. They do not explain themselves, defend themselves, or compete for attention. And yet somehow, when they do speak, everyone listens. Not because they are loud, not because they are dominant, but because everything about them signals that they have nothing to prove. That kind of person unsettles people who have spent their entire lives performing. Because the silent ones are not performing at all. You have been taught, in a world that rewards noise, that speaking is power, that the person who talks the most is the one who leads, who influences, who wins. Social media rewards volume. Workplaces reward those who speak first in meetings. Culture tells you that if you are not broadcasting yourself constantly, you are invisible. But the Stoics saw this clearly, thousands of years ago, and they came to the opposite conclusion. They understood that the person who speaks without thinking has already lost, that the mouth is often the weapon a man uses to destroy himself. That silence, real disciplined silence, is not the absence of power. It is the most concentrated form of it. This is not a script about becoming cold or distant. It is not about suppressing yourself or shrinking into a corner. It is about something far more dangerous to mediocrity, becoming someone whose inner world is so ordered, so controlled, so deeply rooted, that you do not need external noise to feel real. You become powerful not by demanding attention, but by no longer needing it. If this kind of quiet strength speaks to you, if you are tired of spending your energy on words that cost you more than they give you, then stay with this to the end. What you are about to hear is not theory. It is a practical philosophy drawn from men who faced empires, slavery, illness, exile, and death, and remained unbroken. If this channel resonates with you, consider subscribing to Stoic Zeno, leave a like on this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Now, let us begin. The first rule the Stoics give you is this. Understand that most of what you say is not necessary. Epictetus was a slave. He had no political power, no social standing, no freedom of movement in the conventional sense. And yet he became one of the most studied philosophical minds in history. The foundation of his teaching was simple, radically simple, and it begins with the division between what is in your control and what is not. But underneath that teaching is something people often miss. The recognition that most human suffering comes not from circumstances, but from our response to circumstances. And the most destructive response, the one that costs us the most, is the compulsive need to speak. Think about the last week of your life. Think about how many words you produced. How many of them were necessary? How many conversations did you have that drained you instead of building anything? How many arguments did you start, or join, over something that will not matter in 10 days? How many times did you explain yourself to someone who was not asking in good faith? How many times did you give an opinion that no one requested on a matter that had nothing to do with your life? Epictetus writes, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But this is not just anatomy, it is architecture. The design of how a disciplined human being is supposed to move through the world, gathering information, observing reality, understanding before speaking, and speaking only when there is genuine reason to do so. The Stoic does not stay silent because they have nothing to say. They stay silent because they understand that speaking without purpose is a form of self-betrayal. Every unnecessary word is a small leak in your power, and over time those leaks hollow you out. You become a person who reacts, a person who fills silence with noise because the silence frightens you, and the moment you are frightened of silence, you have lost something essential. Begin here. Begin with the radical practice of asking yourself, before you speak, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said by me right now? These 3 questions will eliminate the majority of what you would have otherwise said, and what remains will carry actual weight. The second rule is this. The person who controls their reaction controls the room. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the Roman world. He commanded legions, governed millions, held the lives of entire nations in his hands. He could have said anything. He could have reacted to any insult, any betrayal, any failure of those around him with the full weight of imperial authority. And yet the Meditations, his private journal never written for public consumption, reveals a man in constant struggle with one thing above all, his own response to events. He writes to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This is not a motivational line for a poster. This is a practical instruction from a man who dealt with military crises, political betrayal, plague, grief, and personal disappointment, all while trying to govern justly. What he is saying is that the only arena where you have total sovereignty is the interior one. Everything outside, what people say about you, how they behave, what they decide, what happens that is beyond your reach. But your reaction, your silence, your composure in the moment of provocation, that is entirely yours. And here is why this is power rather than passivity. When you react, you give the other person a map of your interior. You show them exactly where to press to get a response from you. Every person who has seen you lose your temper now knows your pressure points. Every person who has watched you scramble to defend yourself when criticized knows you are not secure. Every person who has seen you rush to fill an awkward silence knows you cannot be still. You have handed them intelligence. You have shown them your weaknesses. But when you do not react, when you receive provocation with stillness, when criticism lands and you simply look at it without immediately firing back, when someone tries to destabilize you and you remain composed, you become unreadable. And what is unreadable is feared, not because you are dangerous, but because you cannot be manipulated. This is not suppression. Marcus Aurelius was not teaching people to swallow emotion and pretend it does not exist. He processed his feelings deeply, carefully, privately in his journal. The discipline is not the elimination of emotion. The discipline is the decision about where your emotion lives and where it does not. It lives in your private processing. It does not live in your public reactions. Practice this. When someone says something that provokes you, train yourself to take one full breath before you respond. Not as a trick, not as a technique, but as a sincere commitment to acting from reason rather than reflex. Over time, that gap between stimulus and response becomes your territory. And in that territory, you are free. The third rule comes from Seneca, and it is this: what you tolerate in conversation defines the quality of your character. Seneca spent the last decades of his life trying to extract himself from the noise of Roman social life, the dinner parties, the gossip, the endless talk about nothing. He writes in his letters, "Retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." This is not arrogance, it is curation. It is the recognition that the conversations you participate in shape who you become, and that you are responsible for the quality of what you let into your mind. Think about what happens in most social conversations. Someone complains, someone gossips, someone argues about politics, someone dramatizes their suffering, someone invites you to judge a person who is not in the room, someone speaks endlessly about things that do not matter, and you, out of politeness, out of social conditioning, out of fear of seeming aloof or arrogant, you participate, you add your voice, you join the noise, and then you go home and wonder why you feel scattered, why you feel vaguely irritated, why your thoughts feel dirty somehow, like you have been walking through dust. Seneca understood this. He saw that every conversation you engage in costs you something: time, attention, mental clarity, emotional energy. None of those things are infinite. And when you spend them on conversations that add nothing to your understanding, your character, or your relationships, you are not being social, you are being robbed. Slowly, politely, invisibly, but robbed nonetheless. The Stoic learns to tolerate less, not through hostility, but through a calm, firm selectivity. You do not have to explain why you are not engaging in a gossip session. You do not have to justify why you are not offering an opinion on something that does not concern you. You simply do not participate, you redirect, you stay quiet. And the people around you will either respect it or reveal something about themselves by being unsettled by it. Guard what enters your mind through your ears as carefully as you guard what enters your body through your mouth. You are careful about what you eat. Be equally careful about what you listen to and what you speak into the world. The fourth rule is one that most people will resist, and it is precisely because of that resistance that it matters. Let your actions make the speech that your words cannot. There is a particular kind of person. You have met them, perhaps you have been them, who talks extensively about what they are going to do. They speak about their goals with such conviction and passion that they almost believe the speaking is the doing. They tell everyone about the book they are writing, the business they are starting, the change they are making, and the talking is a kind of relief valve. It releases just enough internal pressure that the actual work no longer feels urgent. The announcement becomes a substitute for the accomplishment. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by philosophers who spoke beautifully about virtue. He wrote, in his private reflections, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This is not anti-intellectual. This is a man who had read everything, who had been tutored by the finest philosophical minds of his time, and who recognized that the gap between knowing and being is not crossed by more knowing. It is crossed only by action, only by conduct, only by the daily, unglamorous, unannounced practice of living according to what you believe. Your life makes an argument. Everything you do, every choice you make, every time you act from your values or betray them, it is all evidence in a case that is being built. and the jury is the quality of your character. You are always either strengthening that case or weakening it. Words do not count as evidence. Only actions count. When you speak less about yourself and let your behavior carry the argument, something interesting happens. You stop needing validation. You stop needing people to acknowledge what you are doing or why. The work is its own confirmation. The discipline is its own reward. You become less dependent on the opinions of others, not through arrogance, but through a deep, earned self-knowledge. You know what you are doing, and you know why, and that is enough. The person who does the work quietly, who does not announce their sacrifices, who does not seek recognition for every difficult thing they endure, that person accumulates a kind of silent authority that the performer never reaches, because everyone can see through performance eventually, but no one can argue with results. No one can dismiss the evidence of a life lived with genuine commitment. Speak less, do more, and let the doing become so consistent, so visible, so undeniable, that your words, when you do choose to speak, carry the full weight of everything you have already done. The fifth rule is drawn directly from the discipline of the interior life, and it is this: the more you protect your inner world, the more powerful you become in the outer one. Epictetus taught that you are made of two things: the things that are up to you, and the things that are not. The things that are up to you, your judgments, your intentions, your desires, your aversions, these form the interior world. The things that are not up to you, your reputation, what people say about you, whether they understand you, whether they approve of you, these form the exterior world. Most people spend the majority of their energy on the exterior world, trying to manage how they appear, trying to control what others think, trying to shape their image through the words they produce. And in doing so, they neglect the only thing they actually have real influence over. The interior. The Stoic reverses this entirely. The interior is the primary concern. The exterior is at most a secondary consideration. And the way you protect and cultivate the interior is through silence, through the refusal to expose everything you think and feel to the scrutiny of others, through the practice of having a rich, disciplined, organized inner life that does not require constant external validation to feel real. Think about what happens when you overshare, when you tell everyone what you are going through, when you explain your decisions in full to people who did not ask, when you express every opinion on every subject without filter. You are not being authentic. You are being porous. You are a container with no walls. And a container with no walls cannot hold anything. The silent person holds things. They process grief without broadcasting it. They work toward goals without announcing them. They feel anger without performing it. They experience doubt without confessing it to everyone they meet. And because of this, their interior becomes increasingly organized, increasingly rich, increasingly capable. They are building something quietly, in the space that noise would have occupied. Seneca writes, "Concentrate yourself. Spend your time with those who will help you improve. Admit into your life only those books that are good. Do not ask why you were born in the age you were born in. You cannot change it." There is a kind of radical focus in this instruction. A narrowing, a refusal to be diffused across every conversation, every argument, every social obligation. The Stoic turns inward, not to escape the world, but to become someone worth sending back into it. Your inner world is your most important asset. It is the source of your decisions, your resilience, your character. Protect it. Do not scatter it across conversations that do not deserve it. Do not expose it to people who have not earned that kind of access. Cultivate it in private, in silence, in the daily practice of examining your own thoughts and bringing them into alignment with your values. The sixth and final rule is the one that encompasses all the others, and it is this: silence is not empty. It is the fullest thing there is. Western culture has pathologized silence. Silence in a conversation feels like failure. Silence on social media is interpreted as irrelevance. Silence in a relationship is labeled as emotional unavailability. Silence in the face of criticism is read as guilt. We have been conditioned to believe that presence equals noise, that to exist is to produce sound, to generate content, to fill every available space with some form of signal. But the Stoics understood something that our culture has almost entirely forgotten. That silence is not the absence of something. It is the presence of something profound. It is the condition in which thought becomes clear, in which emotion can be processed without being performed, in which the self can be truly examined rather than merely projected. Marcus Aurelius writes, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Think about how many words are spoken every day that cost people their self-respect. Arguments entered in anger, opinions delivered without care, gossip participated in casually. Each one is a small erosion of something that matters. And silence, the deliberate principled choice not to speak when speech would cost you, is not retreat. It is self-preservation in the deepest sense. Silence communicates things that words cannot. When you are the person in the room who does not scramble to fill every pause, who does not offer unsolicited opinions, who does not rush to explain or defend or justify, you communicate something powerful. You communicate that you are comfortable in yourself, that you do not need the validation of noise, that you have already resolved something inside yourself that other people are still searching for loudly. There is a reason why the wisest figures in every tradition, philosophical, spiritual, historical, are associated with silence, not because they had nothing to say, but because they understood the weight of words. They had felt the difference between speaking from stillness and speaking from reaction, and they had chosen stillness. Not once, but every day, as a practice, as a commitment, as a way of respecting their own interior and everyone else's. The person who is silent out of fear is invisible, but the person who is silent out of strength, out of a genuine, disciplined choice to conserve energy for what matters, that person fills the room with something you can feel but cannot see, something that unsettles those who are still trying to earn their power through volume. You do not need to announce your discipline. You do not need to tell people you are practicing Stoicism or working on yourself or choosing to speak less. You simply live it. You walk into conversations differently. You respond to provocation differently. You make different choices about where your attention and your words go. And over time, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily and unmistakably, you become someone different, someone who does not chase attention, someone who has built something solid inside themselves that does not require constant external maintenance. That is silent power. It is real, it is earned, and it is available to you, not as a personality type, not as a gift you either have or don't, but as a practice. A daily, unglamorous, repeatable practice of choosing depth over noise, stillness over reaction, and action over announcement. This is what Stoicism teaches. Not that you should be cold, not that you should be distant or indifferent to other people, but that the foundation of genuine connection, genuine influence, and genuine power is an interior life that has been built carefully, protected deliberately, and expressed only when expression is truly called for. The Stoics did not write their philosophy for people who had easy lives. Epictetus wrote from slavery. Seneca wrote under the constant threat of execution. Marcus Aurelius wrote on the front lines of war, dealing with plague and political betrayal and the weight of empire. These were not comfortable men writing comfortable ideas. They were people under enormous pressure, finding a way to remain whole, to remain human, grounded, and clear, in conditions that would break most people. Their answer, across all of them, was the same. Go inward. Control what you can control. Speak from principle rather than emotion. Let your life make the argument. Protect your interior. Choose silence not as weakness but as the most concentrated expression of strength you have available. You carry this choice with you into every conversation, every moment of provocation, every temptation to explain yourself to someone who has already decided who you are. Every single day, you are given dozens of opportunities to either scatter your energy or conserve it, to either react or respond, to either fill silence with noise or let the silence work for you. The 6 rules are not complicated. They do not require years of study or access to ancient texts. They require only the willingness to practice them, imperfectly, consistently, honestly, and the patience to let the results speak for themselves. Speak less, listen more, react less, observe more, explain yourself to fewer people. Let your actions make your argument. Guard your inner world with the same care you would give to anything precious. And understand that silence, real silence, chosen silence, is not emptiness. It is where everything important lies. If you have stayed with this to the end, you already know something about yourself. You are not looking for entertainment. You are looking for something that holds. Something that was true 2,000 years ago in the courts of Rome and the hills of Greece, and is just as true today in whatever life you are living and whatever pressures you are navigating. Stoicism holds, not because it is optimistic, not because it promises comfort, but because it is honest, ruthlessly, practically, compassionately honest about what human beings actually are and what we actually need. This channel exists to bring that philosophy to you, not as abstract theory, but as a living practice. If this video gave you something real, leave a like. It helps more people find this content who need it. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these 6 rules hit closest to home for you, or share what you are currently working on in your own practice of silence and discipline. Your perspective matters, and this community grows stronger when you contribute to it. Share this video with someone in your life who is working on becoming quieter, more grounded, more deliberate, because that kind of person is rare and they deserve to find this philosophy. Suitsport to Stoic Zeno. There is more coming, on discipline, on indifference, on how to live with the reality of suffering, on what the Stoics understood about death that made them unafraid of life. Each video is built to give you something that stays with you, not a feeling, not a temporary boost, something structural. The Stoics are waiting for you. They have been waiting for 2,000 years, and everything they have to say, they say quietly.